Hi, I'm Steve. I'm the manager of the Gila Native Plant Nursery for the Gila Watershed Partnership. We're a nonprofit in Safford, Arizona, Southeast Arizona. And we were pretty excited back in 2019 to be contacted by Bat Conservation International, Dan Taylor, about growing agaves for bats. And of course, I had no clue what I knew that there were nectar feeding bats, but that there was this initiative that had come about by BCI. And when I first heard about it, we will plant 100,000 agaves. That's a lot of agaves. And I thought, wow, who's going to grow all these agaves? Well, you know what? Bit by bit, inch by inch, you get a lot of agaves in the ground. So anyway, so our main focus for our efforts is, of course, the lesser long-nosed bats, which you see the range here, the range map. And as Kristen said, they come from Central America all the way up into southeastern Arizona, southwestern New Mexico. It's a long migration. The females come up, have their pups, they're weaned, and then they head on back down to their southern regions. So that's quite an undertaking. Like Kristen said, these females they're pregnant. There is and I was trying to find it. There is a video of a female bat feeding with this huge baby, and obviously the darn thing's about ready to wean, clinging to her, and she's struggling to feed off these agaves. It's a pretty massive effort for these poor females. So we've got two species of interest that we're working with of agaves. Agave palmeri here, and that's one of the agaves that's most common in our region, southeastern Arizona, from about the 3,000 to 6,000 foot elevation range. You can see they get to be a good sized agave here with Lexi standing next to one. They get about 4 to 5 feet tall, about 6 feet wide. Not really, for the cactophile, it's not one of the most charismatic agaves, but they are pretty impressive in the landscape. As you can see, the flowers on the right here, they are a very unimpressive flower for an agave, but they're very nectar rich. So the bats don't care what the flowers look like. The bats just care that they are full of nectar, and that's a plus. The other species that we work with is agave perii, which a lot of folks are familiar with. It's a very popular landscape plant because it's just a very attractive agave. It is also, it grows at the upper elevations for these bats. And I have found them up to 9,000 feet elevation in the Pinaleno Mountains. So they spend a lot of the year in cold areas and certain populations. And as you can see, they get about 3 feet tall, about 4 feet wide. So nice medium-sized agave for a landscape. And they're pretty easy to grow from seed as far as that's concerned. So it all starts with the seeds, and we do our own collection of the seeds. One of the things that I really wanted to emphasize here is, first of all, if you do collect seeds, you need to get conditional use permits for public lands or written permission. In this day and age, if you are caught pilfering seed, as far as what the government is concerned, it's not a very pretty picture. And also, the Seeds of Success program guides about you want to collect 20% or less of the seed of a given population that you're collecting from for all kinds of plants. I personally look at it 10% or less. And part of the reason is that succulents in general, even though they're obviously iconic, you think of saguaros, you think of agaves, yuccas, etc., they're very dominant in the landscape visually. But as far as their populations on a given acreage, they're probably the least amount of plants on a given acre. And also their seeds in production aren't as great as many other plants. So if you think of creosote bush, grasses, et cetera, that occupy the same zone, succulent species don't produce as much seed. All the more reason to collect less, because on a given year, that amount of seed may be what carries the next generation. And so if you over collect seed, you're impacting that ability of that population to reproduce itself. So these are just a few of the guidelines that we use when we're doing seed collection and processing. Seed production. So we do growing of agaves in these forestry style cells, and I'll show another picture in a moment. And we do them by the hundreds or the thousands, depending upon what BCI would like us to grow for them. You see the picture on the left, agave perii seedlings at 19 days old, and obviously a monocot, like grasses, palm trees, bamboos, etc. Agaves, any plants in the Asparagaceae are monocots. They have the single seed leaf. You see the little seed on the tip of the leaf there. And then by about 25 days old, they're starting to produce true leaves and beginning to produce that rosette. Okay, so the goal, of course, is to have healthy 1-gallon sized plants, transplantable plants, as quickly as possible. Like I said, we start them in these forestry style cells. They're 10 cubic inch. And you see the image on the right there, the nice straight roots that are produced in those. And you can get an agave seedling up to pretty good size in short order within a number of months, and certainly within about 6 to 9 months, they're transplantable size. And these the cells, these are used extensively in the Pacific Northwest to produce tens of thousands of conifers, hundreds of thousands of conifers for reforestation. And I found that many desert plants love these types of cells to produce nice long straight roots. So they've been very instrumental in growing these agaves, starting the agaves out from seedling stage. And in agave palmeri, we can get up to transplantable size in about 1.5 years. Agave perii takes a little longer, it's a little slower, so that can be 2.5 years to get those up to size. And then you finish them up, like I said, then we put them in 1-gallon pots. 1-gallon pots are easy for volunteers and people to handle, and they kind of understand because that's what standard nursery plants come in. So you can see agave perii on the left here, kind of midway through the process. These were just potted up a couple of months ago. And then agave palmeri in the bed of the truck, going somewhere. I don't remember which project that was, but anyway, you can see that's about the size we want them for planting out. And bada bing, bada boom, you've got a bunch of agaves within 1 year or 2. So our area of focus is, of course, southeast Arizona, southwest New Mexico, predominantly Cochise, Pima, and Santa Cruz counties in Arizona, and Hidalgo and Grant counties in New Mexico. And like Kristen said, we're looking for those migration corridors and how we can enhance plants in those areas and identify where those bats want to be. Usually a lot of the places that we plant, there are agaves there, but we're enhancing that population, and we do that in other restorations efforts as well. So Dan Taylor, like I said, was our primary contact initially for these efforts. He's been awesome to work with. But one of the things I really wanted to emphasize here, this is a quote off of the BCI internet website. And if you get a chance, you need to go to the BCI website because it's way cool. There, if you're into bats or anything like that, you'll just get lost for days there. Anyway, kind of interesting, the absence of bats, the seeds of agave fall to 1/3000th of normal. That I wanted to emphasize, and it shows a very truly symbiotic relationship between these bats and agaves. You take either one out of the equation, and all of a sudden you've got a big problem. You are not going to have agaves, you're not going to have bats. And so these, we are still learning about how integral plants and animals are. And this is one example of that. And so one of our first projects was in the Boot Heel of New Mexico, down by the Big Hatchet Mountains. And I just wanted to emphasize, if you look at the picture on the right, look at all those rocks. Okay, so you roll out to a site, and we're going to plant 100 or 200 or 300 agaves here, and you look at all those rocks. That's fun. That's fun digging, folks. I guarantee you that. So yeah, a lot of our sites, they're out in the middle of nowhere. And here we are with our water truck, because we do water the agaves in. This is a lesson in, and this is Restoration 101, you better do a very good tool analysis before you go, because there isn't a Home Depot right around the corner there to go grab an extra shovel if you need one. You have to take everything with you, everything you could possibly imagine, PPE in the form of gloves, safety glasses, shovels, water, snack sticks, whatever. You better have it with you because you're not leaving once you get out there. And you know, you get onto some of these spots and you get the cell phone signal. Welcome to Mexico. We're going to charge you 5 times the amount to use your cell service. And also, here's an example of some of the materials that we use. There's some agaves in 1-gallon pots there in the right-hand picture. And also wire protectors. So these are pieces of wire mesh that are about, roughly about 8 or 9 inches wide by about 12 inches long. And those we put around the ground, around the agaves when we plant them and staple them in place. So we do get predation. Obviously, you've got a nice fresh agave that tastes wonderful right out of the nursery, and all kinds of critters, of course, rabbits, but our biggest nemesis is javelinas. And rabbits might chew on the leaves, but the javelinas will rut out the plants and eat the whole thing. So we have to protect them from getting rutted out by the peccaries. And you know, we get the volunteers. Look at all that nice rocky soil back. Sometimes you dig a hole and then you backfill, and it's kind of like it's all rocks. Is there any soil here? Again, typically we plant 100 to 300 agaves in a given area. Bat Conservation International goes out and flags polygons where we go out and then we'll cluster maybe 10 agaves around those flags. And so we have plants scattered around in a given area. And there's another mature agave palmeri, hopefully to inspire our new little plantings out there. And then solitude, you know, so one of the benefits is you get to go out and you're out in the boonies and you're told to go plant some plants. And it's kind of like, that's way cool. I'm sorry. It's one of my favorite things to do in my job. And look at this. We're sitting in the Pinaleno Mountains, looking across the San Bernardino Valley at the Chiricahua Mountains. So we're in New Mexico, looking across the valley there to Arizona, the Chiricahua Mountains. And, you know, sometimes the views and scenery are just absolutely spectacular. These bats have a really cool spot to live in. So you're near Rodeo, New Mexico, again in the Pinaleno Mountains, doing a little planting demonstration for the team. We always do a little planting demo for folks, get them oriented as to how to properly plant the plants so we're not damaging them as much as possible. And what the process is. It gives me a chance to kind of dig around and see how hard a dig it's going to be. And then people get right underway. People love this. I've had volunteers and whatnot, and they really thrive on this type of work. It's pretty fun, even though it's out in the middle of nowhere. And agave readiness. We, you know, one of the things with restoration plants, this is kind of a crucial thing. You do not want to plant a pot-bound plant. So in other words, you do not want roots that are so old and so hard as a rock to put in the ground. The plant will, on its own, it's going to struggle to try to break roots out of that root ball. And then if you mangle the roots or you loosen them up and you break a bunch of roots, you don't have the opportunity to stand there with a hose and nurture that plant past that damage. So you want plants that have rooted the soil together, knitted it together just enough that they're still relatively loose but held together, and then they can take off on their own once they get a little moisture. So one of those crucial things for doing restoration, this is where it doesn't matter whether you're planting a mesquite tree or you're planting agave or any kind of plants. You want those roots just right, and then sometimes that's a little hard to achieve. So here's one of our GWP staff members, Kira Kaufman. She's measuring the plant hole depth. Of course, like any plant, you don't want them too deep. You don't want them too high. You want them just right, just like the 3 bears. And there's the finished product. So there's an agave, ta-da, as fancy as it is. You know, we put the wire mesh around the base of the plant. We cover up that wire mesh with some of the rocks. 9 times out of 10, you got plenty of rocks you're digging out of the hole. And then we do a little burlap shade protection on the west side of the plants. Even though these plants have been hardened off outdoors, you've changed its environment. And so a little piece of burlap on the west helps shade that apical point, protecting it from a little too much sun. And basically that burlap decomposes and sloughs away before long. It's not long lived. And that just gives a little extra protection if you're not planting on the shady side of a shrub or something like that. And then, of course, for the cactophile, there's all kinds of other eye candy out there. This is in the pinnulenos, the pancake prickly pear. One of the things, this is one of my actually favorite prickly pears because I worked with it when I first started doing restoration in 1994 at Castle Mountain Mine over in the East Mojave Desert. And here we are in southeastern, well, actually, this was southwestern New Mexico. And there's my good old buddy pancake prickly pear, Puntia chlorotica. You can see the normal pads in the center picture there. And then you get, if you look at plants close enough, you get to see some really oddball aberrancies, like this elongated pad, whether that's some hybrid thing going on in there or what's going on there. It's kind of curious. We get the Arizona rainbow cactus, which of course is one of my favorites, and those are very prevalent throughout our planting areas. Hedgehog cactus, the Echinocereus spendleri variety, rectospinus. And there's others. Of course, unfortunately, our planting times are often relegated to either monsoon season or winter time. So oftentimes these plants aren't quite in flower when we're doing our work there. And, it takes a number of people. It takes a village. This was a planting that we did at the height of 2020 during COVID. So we did our distancing, appropriate distancing. For the photograph, but this was a combination of Gila Watershed Partnership folks and Bat Conservation International staff. And I'll tell you, everybody that goes out there, it's hard work, but look at all the smiles. Everybody loves doing this stuff. And finally, one of our planting areas in the Dos Cabeza Mountains. This was a joint collaboration with the Bureau of Land Management. This was one of our abilities to do a project with one of the federal agencies here. And also, this was an opportunity through Gila Watershed Partnership. We have a program called Southeastern Arizona Youth Land Stewardship, or SEALS. And this is where we do a 6-week program during the summer months. We hire 18 to 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds, usually high school students or recent high school graduates, maybe young college students, and get them to experience doing restoration work and hopefully inspire some of these young folks to want to pursue some either restoration or biological sciences that involves the outdoors and the wilderness. And we actually have had very positive feedback from former SEALS program youth that they have pursued some environmental work, which is way cool. And in the picture on the left there, of course, is Dan Taylor and Casey Bruner from our local BLM office here in Safford. And on the right or on the left there is Jonathan Doogie, one of our GWP staff members, and yours truly. Nobody gets out of digging holes and planting. And so usually by the end of the day, I'm pretty whooped, but it's probably some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. And so propagating. So there are pluses to propagating plants from seed, especially when you're doing them by the thousands. This was a variegated agave palm rye that came up in a seed batch. This was wild seed I collected up in the pinnulenos, and voila, that's for an otherwise not very charismatic agave, that's kind of a charismatic variegate. So I'm very pleased with that plant. It resides in my backyard. Unfortunately, it's not going out in the field. But that's some of the fun stuff you do when you do actual seed production. Let's see if I can get this going. So this is my backyard last summer. And one of the things with these bats is they will come through and they will drain hummingbird feeders. If they find out where you're at, you're on their map. And these guys basically were causing poor Julie to buy 10 pounds of sugar a week to keep 3 feeders filled, and they will literally drain it. And it's kind of sad in the morning when the hummingbirds come out in the morning and there's empty feeders and they're giving you the evil eye, like, are you going to fill these feeders? Because we're hungry. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting when you see this kind of thing at your feeders. I know that the hummingbirds are kind of like, yeah, grow more agaves so these darn bats go back in the field where they belong. But yeah, pretty fun stuff. Finally, I'd like to dedicate my program to David Solomon, who passed away this past June, and here he is with us collecting seed last November. And if you've grown any plants in the Intermountain West, you've probably grown something of David's in your yard if you've landscaped with the native plants. He was a founder of Santa Fe Greenhouses, High Country Gardens, which I believe is in Denver now, and Waterwise Gardening in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the loss of David is very profound for the horticulture industry, especially native plants in the Southwest. And I am certainly going to miss doing field trips with David. And that is my program. And there's my contact information at Gila Watershed Partnership. I'm happy to entertain questions. And that is my little segment.